Hey, what is up, everybody? This is your boys. We are back in town. This is Headhunters Live. My name is David Stephen Patterson. Everybody else calls me DSP. We have over here my brother from another mother. We have Neil Lebovitz. Say hello, Neil. All right. And then
Hello,
we have
Neil.
also the best looking man. Oh my God, Neil, the best looking man of the business over there on the far side of the screen, Chris Wessel. Welcome, guys. How y'all doing?
Missed
Pretty
you.
good.
It's been a couple of weeks, but yeah, doing well.
It has been a minute, and guys, I'm not gonna bury the lead here. We got a really great guest on today. We have some of you guys may have heard about this fella named Scott Love. In fact, I remember when I first got in the business, some of my first training material was Tony Byrne. And then a couple years after that, I started studying Scott Love. So really early in my career, I was studying Scott Love. So he's a great trainer, and then he's also an attorney recruiter as well. So he recruits legal eagles, and he's also an author. He's also a podcast host. He is a sailor, and what is it? Is this make him like a Renaissance man? Would you say?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay.
It sounds
Yeah.
like
He puts some good stuff out though too. I hadn't attended any of his trainings necessarily, but I've been aware of him for many years. And like if you follow him on LinkedIn, he puts a lot of just great nuggets out there, like really, really good and stuff. And that's how you can tell when you got somebody who does training who's still in the trenches doing the work.
Mhm.
Like that there's a lot of value to that. I mean, not that there aren't some great trainers that just do training, but I mean, you can tell he knows what he's talking about because he's out there.
He's a good trainer. I went to see him live twice. And when you're a trainer, which I was for a decade, you're really critical of other trainers that you see what they don't do. And he was just always so well received and just really good at his craft. I don't know if he still does the same thing, but he was into gambling. So everything had a gambling angle to it. We'll have to talk about that. He had the cards, he had all that stuff. It was really good.
Well, even before that, it was sailing. I remember it was like a sailing motif. At least when I was first started listening, we had a sailing motif as well. Well, and I will say today we're going to be talking about client relationships. We talk a lot on the show about client development, getting new clients, but in today's day and age, keeping your clients is so important. And so we're going to be diving deep into client relationships, how to maintain your relationships, how to nurture relationships, and how to make sure they keep coming back for more. So with that said, before we get into it, we're going to bring them on in just a minute. Guys, if you're watching this live, do me a favor, comment live in the comments. It actually helps the algorithm, helps us reach more people. If you're watching a replay, comment replay as well. And with that said, I wanted to talk to you just a few brief moments here before we bring Scott on in just a minute. We'll let everybody else come in live, but I do want to mention that if anybody here is looking to get off the direct hire feast and famine hamster wheel, where it's deal 1 month, zero the next, deal 1 month, zero the next, and you're always stressed out, trying to even out your revenue, get into contracting, temporary staffing, especially when the economy's kind of hurting. A lot of companies go towards contingent labor, but I know the back office piece of it is really, really difficult. So, as it so happens, Neil is the brainchild behind Boss, probably the best name for a company in the business, back office staffing solutions. Go to backofficenow.com/GMM, where you can get a training on what's called the gross margin method. If you want to drive your profitability, if you're currently using contractors, go check out that training, and or just book a call with one of their people. They walk you right through it. They'll take all the teeth out of contracting, and you can insulate yourself regardless what the economy does. All right.
I'm a customer. His team is awesome to work with. I used to have a firm in the past where I did factoring and ran the payroll for temps myself. I've used Neil's team. They're fantastic. It's very smooth, very simple.
Thank you. And thank you, Chris. And I just want to say this: if you do it and you don't need a back office, download this presentation. It's going to show you all the pitfalls and what you're probably doing to price your deals incorrectly. It's a really good one. There's no commercial in it. It's a great, PowerPoint PDF, and download that today.
Excellent. And
let the dogs out.
Let the dogs out. Can you hear that? My dog barking. All right. Well, that's it. Let me actually fix that. Let me and that should take care of it. All right. So for me, guys, for those of you who don't know, we work with search firms and independent recruiters to scale up their sales and marketing systems. I'll keep this brief. If you want to put your market on blast, be in front of 5 to 10,000 prospects every single month, position yourself as an authority, and really help insulate yourself against a kind of a weird economy right now, go to thedigitalheadhunter.com/build. If you're tired of banging your head against the wall trying to figure out your tech stack, we take care of the whole thing for you in 30 days with an ROI guarantee. And then last but not least, I'm going to make this quick too because we got to get Scott on. I know people are itching for it. If anybody's looking for a VA, and not only just a VA, but a VA that is trained on how to do things like sourcing, right? Which is something that VAs typically are it's very hard to find a VA that can do that. Chris Wessel is your man. Go to chriswessel.com. And like I said, if you want a VA that's actually trained on this business, go talk to him. He can help you out. All right. So with that said, let's get down. I don't want to take too long in getting Scott on the call here. So Scott, if you're ready, we are now officially the Love Shack.
Hey,
You've never heard that joke before. Sure, you've never.
How are you
heard
guys
that
doing?
Before.
Good seeing you. Thank you for having me here.
Hey, thank you, Scott. Well, great to have you here. You know, I tell you what, I was pretty excited when you said yes. You know, I got down on one knee and broke up my little Headhunters live ring, and he said yes to being on the show. So we're really excited to have you on, Scott.
This is great.
You're a legend.
Thank you. Yeah, Neil, you and I go way back, man. You and I go.
Oh my God, we totally do. Yeah, I was saying you're the real McCoy. That's why I genuflected to you. I don't do that too often on the show.
Well, I sold my training business in 2016, got out of it, kept my head down doing deals, and then about a year ago I missed it. And so I wanted to get back into it a little bit. And you're right, Neil, I used to gamble. I used to be a professional card counting blackjack player. I was mentored by 2 alumni of the MIT blackjack team. And so I did that for a year and a half. And then I was like, I hate doing math for 8 hours a day in smoky environments. But I learned that game theory applies to recruiting. So recruiting is my gamble. My wife even tells me recruiting is your gamble. I'm like, it is, because it's all about probabilities and how do we gain a higher likelihood of a favorable outcome? What are the variables that I have control over? And what can I do to strengthen the deal and to pull it across the finish line with a heavy rope instead of a thread? So that's what I love talking about all the time.
Well, Scott, let's dive in here for those folks who don't know who you are, because again, you know, no matter how well know you're in the industry, there are always going to be folks who don't know who you are. So give us the brief rundown, who you are, kind of your position in the space, and from there we'll dive in.
Absolutely. So I own a company called the Attorney Search Group. I founded it where we do legal recruiting, and we're niched. I recruit partners for global law firms, and not just partners, but I'm niching deeper into private equity partners in global law firms. I've done all different types of placement for law firms: IP, patent litigation, prosecution, trademark litigation, corporate, regulatory, government contracts. And then I decided it's gotten so hard to make placements, and that's something we can talk about too, that niching, like a niche within a niche, is a way to establish credibility and really dominate your area of expertise by claiming a space. So that's what I do. But I also like talking about recruiting. And so I started a group coaching program about a year ago. I started coaching people again. I like to speak at conferences. I like to speak at recruiting conferences. I thought about being a full-time speaker and doing nothing but that. But you know, the downside is that you're gone a lot. I love my wife, but I like my wife. I mean, I don't want to be gone 300 days a year. And I do some travel for my work. I go to New York a lot to meet with clients, a lot of happy hours and dinners, entertainment with clients and things like that. A lot of golf with clients, which is great. But that's what I do. And, you know, first and foremost, I like doing deals more than anything. And I like the work that's involved in recruiting, where you can go deep, and there is intellectual challenge in recruiting if you know how to look for it. And when you go deep and you study something, you find solutions, you find new ways of doing it, things that you just hadn't even thought through before. And I've learned more probably in the last 3 years than I did previous, I think, my entire career combined, because COVID changed everything. So that's who I am, David. That's what I do.
Oh my God. Let me say this, Scott. You just reminded me. One of the great things that you would train on, and I forgot all about this, is the deal deconstruction.
Yeah, deal
Right?
autopsy. Deal autopsy.
Deal autopsy. I love
Yeah.
that. It was so good.
Oh yeah, I had 2 deals not close in the last 2 weeks. And there's another metric that I use where I time how quickly can I bounce back from that adversity. One deal, it would have been a split. My take would have been about 75,000 on the fee. The other deal would have been about $180,000 fee. And I lost both of those in a matter of days. And my time to recover was about 2 or 3 minutes. All right, I'm good. I'm ready to get back on the phone. And I think resilience, there are actual, and this is something I've taught people, something I've mastered because I've taught it, is there are action steps you can take to build your resilience muscles. There's actually a process. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, I'm good. And those people that can perform at a high level, if you think of your year, it's made up of a series of well-executed hours. And the only thing that counts is the hour that's right now. And if you went through adversity, how quickly can you perform at a peak level even when you don't feel like it? Which, if you think about recruiting, adversity is what it's built on. A 5-to-1 interview to placement ratio, that's good. And that means that 80% of the things you're working on are going to fall apart. And that's normal. So, Neil, it's just looking at this deal fell apart. How can I learn from that? Was it good or was it bad? Well, it was good because look at what I learned. And I learned several key things from those 2 deals in the last 2 weeks. I'm actually glad they didn't work out because I'm going to make more on the back end.
Right. As long as you're honest with yourself. And that was your big thing too, right? You can't lie to yourself or you're in trouble, right?
You got to accept full responsibility for everything you do.
Self-reflection is a bitch, as they say. Or honest self-reflection is. Well, let me ask you. So obviously, using the gambling analogy, you can either be the house or have the market be the house. And I'd imagine that being comfortable with failure is a lot easier when you are the house. And I think being the house depends upon, if you want to be the house, then you need to have steady clients and bringing in new clients as well. But today I want to talk about having steady clients, because in this day and age, there's so much competition. There's so many recruiters out there. It's a saturated market, and so many people aren't hiring anymore. So clients become a lot more precious. So let me ask you this: what are the first steps? So let's say somebody's watching this who is a typical recruiter, worst contingency with other clients, use other contingency recruiter to start kind of there at the lowest common denominator. How does somebody like that start developing clients for the long term instead of trying to out hustle the other guy all the time? How do you do that?
That's a good question. Well, first it starts with what is distinct about you. What can you say about yourself that nobody else can say about themselves? It starts with that. There was one person I was coaching. Well, tell me what you did before you got into recruiting. I used to be an actor. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. We can actually go pretty deep with that. Another one was, I used to be a professional golfer. We can take distinction out of that because I used to be a professional golfer. I work at this level, at a higher level. I go deeper. I'm able to go through the whole process and bring people that I know you're going to be happy with. So I would say start with that. You have to have a good story, a good narrative. Start with what's unique about you and how can that benefit your client's problems. If you did a survey, let me kind of ask you guys a question. 3 questions. The first one is, if you could rank your own effectiveness in recruiting, and everybody else listening, think of this, answer this in your mind. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your own opinion of yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 meaning you think you are more effective at recruiting and doing deals compared to your competition. Where are you in that range? 1 to 10. Number 2, if you were to ask, compared to the whole industry, so you know how you are, but compared to all of your competitors, the people, if you're an insurance recruiter, who are the other insurance recruiters you're competing with? Compared to that sector on a scale of 1 to 10, how much more effective are you compared to those immediate competitors? And the third question is, if we were to survey your clients and ask them, how good do they think you are on a scale of 1 to 10? What rank would you give yourself? And then the only thing that counts, cross out the answers to the first 2 questions. They don't count. The only thing that counts is, what does your client think about you? It doesn't matter how good you think you are. It matters how good does that client think about you. And so I think starting with a narrative, David, what is unique about you? What is distinct? And how can that serve your clients on a personal and an emotional level? Meaning, when you're selling your search work to a prospect, you're not selling to a company, you're selling to an individual. And you've got to ask questions in a way that gets to the point of what is the pain point they're feeling and how does that impact them on a personal and even an emotional level. And you don't need to like bring it up word for word in that conversation. But I think that's where it starts, is knowing what's unique about you and how can that benefit your prospects. And then there's a whole series of other things we can talk about too. But that's a good starting point, David.
Well, when you say being unique, so what does that mean? Because obviously we can talk about, say, as you mentioned before, doing a niche within a niche, so which I like to call niche inception. But niche within a niche, or do you mean more like being unique in the sense of having a unique methodology? For example, we're not just putting a butt in a seat, but we follow the Scott Love method, or the method by which we place people that is proven to be like that whole thing, right? So, or how can they be unique? Because it could be
that. There was one search firm, and I didn't mean to cut you off. One search firm that was ISO 9000 certified. They went through that whole process. That is distinct. Their protocols are unique. It can also be the core values. What's unique about our company is that we follow these core values. There's a staffing company I met at ASA when I spoke there years ago, that I was doing a roundtable on this, and they said our core values, we kind of build our whole business model around our core values. I thought that's unique. By the way, my computer just froze. Can you guys still see me okay?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're coming to A-okay.
I have no idea.
A-okay.
I'm good. I got my laptop standing by. Okay, there it is. It just came back. But anyways, also there was one young woman I was doing a seminar with, and she came up to me afterwards. She said, I just graduated from college. I don't know what to say. I said, what do people say is unique about you? They say I have an engaging personality. I said, start with that. You can also build in uniqueness within your model, within mine, a niche within a niche. What's unique about me is that I specialize in private equity placement. Wow, you're going to get calls back when you have a niche within a niche. There was one staffing company I was consulting with. They were in Southeast Florida. And she said, I'm getting beaten up on margins. All the big Kelly's manpowers are beating up on margins. I just can't compete. And over a period of time, my recommendation to her was to show distinction based on your niche, not doing executive assistants, secretaries, a controller, or like accounting type people, clerks, people like that. I said, just do 4-year degreed executive assistants who are bilingual. And that's it. That's a fungible niche. You can take a 4-year degreed bilingual secretary from a construction company and place him or her into a bank. It's fungible. So it's going to open you up to more opportunities. But I said, you're going to build uniqueness and distinction just on your model. So you can do it that way also.
Well, and so I think that. I know I've been doing this for 20 years as of this month. And for the first 15 plus of those, the only way I thought of differentiating was how most recruiters, I think, do, which is, I specialize in this type of work or this type of industry, right? And thanks to some coaches and mentors, I started shifting towards the model, the engagement model, and what was different about that. So like one of the things I go to market with is, and I primarily do engaged searches, usually for leadership positions. And in my particular neck of the woods, upstate New York, I don't have a lot of competition that focuses on leadership searches. But just to kind of put the extra oomph into it, I tell them, hey, listen, I don't take on competing searches. So if
That's great.
Recruiting companies that we maybe won't name on this call that specialize in, say, accounting are going to hire a controller for you, or a VP of accounting or something, or a CFO, they're doing that for everyone else because that's how they run a big business. If I take on a CFO search for you, I am your exclusive advocate in the marketplace for that role until this role is complete. And they're like, wow, that's so like just little, and that was from customer feedback too. That was another thing I got better at over the years, was listening to like, what matters to you, right? Like, and so I had some situations where like, oh, like I'll put a ceiling on the fee maybe. Like let's agree that not to exceed this amount. Or let's do some other tweak because in that case, it helps me be on the same side of the table with them when it comes to negotiations. They're like, oh, you would do that? And most of the time I'm maybe leaving a few grand on the table and making, you know what I mean? So like some of that stuff was engagement model based as opposed to the usual stuff. And it came from what customers told me was important to them. So like
That's great.
And this is stuff, I mean, but 20 years, this is really only something I developed in the last few years. So like it takes a while to learn this stuff.
You know what I love, Scott, that you're talking about, and David too, and we've talked about this before, but it's unique. It's not any cliche that you say, which so many recruiters do. I hear it over and over. We got great service. We're this, like everyone can say that. Everyone does say that. Stop saying stuff that doesn't make you unique.
Or if you do need to say those things, to piggyback off what Neil said, use some sort of differentiating, like maybe stats or numbers. So for example, our customer service is great. Or can you say 85% of all of our business come from repeat customers, which demonstrates that your customer service is great, right? So it's that demonstration. Mm-hmm. So if you have to do something like that, then say something specific that proves it. The other thing I would mention as well, I had years and years ago, back when I was a footloose and fancy free bachelor, and back in those days, you always want to meet girls, because you're in the dating scene. It's just what guys do, and you're young, what guys and girls do. And one piece of advice I got from somebody, which is great, and I've taught that, and I've mentioned to other people, and I thought it was amazing. What you can't fix, feature. Right. So for example, I like to learn this from a guy I used to hang out with back then. He was Indian. He was smaller. He was like maybe 5'6", 5'5", smaller, really skinny Indian guy, accent. And usually, guys like that, they're not going to have a lot of success with girls. At least in their heads, they think they're not going to have it. He would talk about how, look, I can't fix it, but I want to feature it. And he leaned into it, and he was so popular and charming, and just because he was different than all the other guys out there, and he was so confident, leaned into it. And so if you're brand new in the industry, you don't have a lot of experience, you're bringing a fresh face to the industry. Or if you're 40 years in the business, then you've got the experience behind you. You come from industry, and you don't have a lot of recruiting experience. Again, you're that fresh face. And so whatever you can't fix about you, then just feature it and find a way to make it a benefit to your client.
That's a great point, David. I think one other thing is, and I think that's great, is thought leadership. I was doing some training for a search firm, and they're talking about how hard it is to sell accounting, finance services, and tell me about your approach. I'm like, that's exactly what everybody else does also. And the problem with this market is that a couple of years ago, people thought, wow, look how hot recruiting is. Let's get into it. And I've got a search firm. Let's increase our staff. Oh my gosh, the demand for talent increased, but then all the competition increased even more so. And so people get inundated with the same message. You can show distinction by what you've written, by where you've spoken, by content that you create that showcases your expertise, that establishes a brand of authority and dominance within your niche. It's absolutely possible for people to do that. You don't do it overnight, but it takes time. And there's a way you could do that, create thought leadership that actually gets you connected with high-level prospects immediately. There's a way to do that.
And the entry into that is not challenging at all, because think about like how many podcast hosts are always looking for somebody to be on their show. Think about how many, I used to run a handful of different professional associations in my neck of the woods. I was the president of the local SHRM chapter, and I was in some other professional groups, and the programming that these organizations put on every month or however, whenever, they're more hard up for speakers than most people realize. Like these smaller, localized groups. So you can start to build a little, name for yourself by reaching out to your chamber or to a professional trade association and saying, hey, do you have anybody to talk about hiring? Right. And more often than not, they're going to be receptive. They might not get you on the calendar right away, but I bet you there's spots on that calendar, because I've been on the other side of that, putting programs together, and they need you more than you realize. So don't be afraid to ask. That's exactly right, Chris.
Well, let's actually move on to subject a little bit. I want to get into actual client relationships, and unless you have a client, and again, maybe your contingency and you compete against other recruiters. So beyond that being unique, right? So what can people start doing with their current clients to start solidifying that relationship, right? What are some strategies that you would suggest?
I think the overarching strategy should be more, better, all. You want to get more business so that you can pick and choose and get better business, like higher margins. And not just that, which clients do you have that are going to call you back, that are going to execute? Which clients do you have that reach out to you? Hey, I wanted to bounce an idea off you. We're thinking up and opening an office here. What do you think about that? That's better business. Which ones? And I remember this years ago in my old niche in construction. I worked for a large publicly held company, and the VP of HR became a good friend. And he told me the day my name was mentioned with their board of directors because of all the people I brought them. I'm like, wow, I feel like a grown up. I've arrived, right? And so more, better, you want those relationships. And there's nothing wrong with letting go of the bottom 10% every year. And then eventually I want to get all the business from my clients. And if it's a big company, you're not going to get literally all, but you want to be the first one that they think of. So I think, number one, you got to do a good job. You got to do a good job. You have to earn that trust. And it's not just the trust in your skills. It's the trust in you actually executing and completing your tasks. When you say, I'll email you that document this afternoon to your client, and you don't do it, you set an expectation and you failed. I don't care what happened. You failed, and it might not be a big deal. It's just a little summary document. It's not that important. You said you're going to do something and you didn't. Now, if you said, I'll get that to you, and it's 7:30 at night and your kid got sick and you can't get it done, send a note. I apologize. I said I'd get that to you tonight. Some things came up. I won't be able to. I'll get it to you first thing in the morning. It's minor, but they see it and they remember it. And they tuck that away. This is somebody.
Under promise, over deliver, right?
Exactly.
It's a good old,
Yeah. And then even beyond that, how many of you guys have made mistakes with your clients? Yes, I have too.
Oh.
You tell them, I made a mistake on something. I goofed up. I apologize, but here's my solution. And you bring it just like a robin egg blue box with the silver ribbon around it. Here's my solution. So I think it's not just being good at what we do. It's being professional. Arrive 3 minutes early and stay late, right? You want to be that kind of person. So I think in essence, it's a leadership business. There's a void of leadership in the world as it is. And in our industry, if you step into it and you show that I am someone on whom you can depend, and you, my client, are under my protection, I will serve you, and it's going to be great. And you're going to be happy with what I do. So I think that's what it's all about, And there's other things we can get into, but what do you think about those ideas, David?
No, it's good. Well, let's actually let's dive a bit more. And so let's talk about doing a good job. So obviously, if you're contingent, you're mixing other competing recruiters, right? Obviously, you get your kind of hands tied to a certain degree. So I'd admit, let's say going up a step beyond that, starting to get maybe working more exclusively with clients, being the incumbent versus one of the many recruiting. How do you make that transition with your current clients? What's the justification, and how do you start developing that sort of relationship beyond just the commodity putting a button to seat relationship?
And that's interesting because that's something I'm doing right now, is proposing a new type of structure that not all my clients are going to go along with, because I got tired of spinning all these plates, working too many things. And then it's just too much randomness and too much chance, where I don't want my primary business model to be an NPC model where here's my great candidate. I'm going to present him to 4 firms. He's going to get 2 offers and I get paid either way. I want to go deeper into a few number of client organizations. So I get to know the chairman. I get to know all the managing partners. I'm going to speak at their partner retreat and coach them on how to interview. And that requires some sort of commitment from them. So I think if you have kind of evolved, and this is something a traditional path also is, start out contingency at a lower fee. I'll do anything. You develop some chops, you get some skills, raise your fee. Now you want to start going into retainer search also. It's the same thing, that you'll know that not everybody's going to go along with you. You want to give everybody the chance to, but they will self-select out. And those that have a need and they see you as a solution, they'll go along with whatever you propose to them, as long as it's reasonable, of course. And so I think in a ways, well, let me ask you, and you don't have to answer this, but I would say whoever's listening, how many placements do you want to make a year? In my world, with the fees, 4 to 8, that's realistic. 4 to 8 good size fees a year. I can do that with 2 clients. I don't want to just have 2 relationships. I'm always bringing new relationships in, even if we don't go together today. And it might be something like, well, we can't work that way. I appreciate that. Let's just keep in touch. And you don't want to ever burn a bridge, of course, but just understand that not everybody's going to go along with what you propose, and that's okay. And you want to keep that funnel. More, better, all. You always want to be putting yourself out there, because now here's a firm that reaches out to you and you can propose this new way of that you're working. Wow, that's great. Because this management consultant spoke highly of you and referred us to you, I'm okay with that, because you've got credibility, because that management consultant saw you speak at a conference, you collaborated together on an article or a podcast or whatever it was, and you have this almost a strategic alliance relationship with other people within your industry niche, and that can refer business into you that you can then capture at a higher level with a much more advantageous model. So I think that's kind of, if we want to call it anything, call it the arc. I think that's the arc of where most of us want to go. Not everybody, it's not for everybody, but when you get tired of just, being a rock and roll headhunter, and you want to have more precise conversations that are more specific, where it gets people's attention. And isn't it interesting that just how we have our structure with our client relationships, that's a thin slice to a prospective candidate on the quality of recruiter that we are. Because when we say we've been retained exclusively by a client, well, they know you've got a level of competence that not everybody else has. That's an assumption. I don't know you, but the way you told me, assuming it's true, of course, you're probably worth my time to talk to. That's what they're thinking. And then further, when you have that close relationship, you can share that list of, here's 50 people I'm going to call. Look at this. Who are the top 5? They check mark 5 people. Then you can say, my client knows who you are, and they think highly of you. And they asked me to reach out to you and tap you on the shoulder and see if you're open to hearing about something that could be advantageous. Oh, well, your client must be very smart. You're going to get calls back that way. So it's all about, Neil, going back to game theory. How do we increase the odds of success? Well, how do people respond to headhunters? Well, if I've never heard of you, if you're just some random person that sounds like everybody else, that has no distinction, I'm not even going to return your call. But if you describe just in a short voicemail message the quality of the relationship that you have, the fact that you can say you had a cocktail with the chairman 2 weeks ago and he shared his vision of the organization with you, that's interesting. That's going to get the attention of people that might not normally return those kinds of calls, which, as we all know, those are the ones we really want. So I think those are a couple of things.
I was going to say, and that reminds me of like earlier when I was doing primarily contingency, and it was tough to get engagement from candidates because you have to be like every recruiter where you're like, hey, I'm working with vague company in vague geography. Please don't apply directly. I'm writing you up as we're talking right now so that I don't get an end run. To like in recent years, when I call someone and I can say, like I tell the customers if they balk at all about the retainer up front, I explain to them, like, when I can reach out to a candidate and tell them who I'm working with, tell them a little bit about the company, like really get it, then it sets me apart because they all get the messages. They all get the spam from recruiters, the lazy spam, the kind of shows you have a weak relationship with your client spam. So when I explain to the customer, I'm going to be able to engage better candidates and I will get a higher response rate from the good ones because I can come out of the gate saying, here's the nature of my relationship with this customer and I can tell you who they are. Like that is extremely powerful.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
How do you, all right, so, all right, well, what about this? So I know a lot of the success you have with the client not comes down to the client itself, because oftentimes clients, they shoot themselves on their own foot, and because they don't know much about how this business works, or they've always done it one way, and no recruiters are ever strong enough around the backbone to say, no way, you should actually do it this way. So how should your average recruiter manage their clients, whether it be maybe from the first search order, or maybe an existing client, but what about some client management technique? Because I know clients that can be slippery, to their own detriment.
I would prioritize them. If you want to go ABC, those are the ones that get back to you. They respond right away. They communicate with you. And by the way, here's a tip. You have a new client, and I always get nervous if it's a new relationship. I don't know them. I'm going to test that. I'm going to first set expectations of how we communicate, and I'm going to test it. I had a quick question. Is there any vesting on your 401k? And see how quickly do they respond. It's an important, relevant question. It's not life-changing, but it's something I need to know. I'm going to intentionally do that, and I'm going to see how quickly do they respond. And if it's not a priority for them today, it's not going to be a priority tomorrow. People don't automatically become responsible adults halfway through the placement process. If they're not that way in the beginning, there's a reason why. And so I think your time is precious. You don't want to waste it in areas that don't give you any return. So I think that would be how I would start that relationship. Who is the alpha? Who is the A? Who gives you access to the leadership where you can hear the vision? And from that, you get some talking points that can get people interested in your opportunity. Who are those organizations that let you interview recent hires, people that have been there for the last 2 years. So you can find out, tell me, what are 3 reasons why someone would join this company? If I have someone on the fence and they're thinking about interviewing with your company, but they're on the fence, what are 3 things you would want them to know that would change their mind? Now you're building a bank of stories. And we're storytellers, recruiters are. And here's another tip. Don't use your opinion about a client's opportunity. I think they're great. And what happens to you? If I join them, I get a big fee. Oh, so of course you think they're great. We have an agenda. So always tell other people's stories. And you can reverse engineer that. You can ask your client to introduce you to, tell me, and let's be on the call. Let's do a conference call. I'd like to interview, or a Zoom call. I'd like to interview somebody that's been with your firm, probably, let's say 20 minutes, no more than that, and get 3 reasons why. So I think that's the A's. The B's, those are the people, you know what, we'll have,
Great nugget. There.
People will say, you know what, we're not going to give you an exclusive. We're not going to give you retained. And we value your contingency relationship. And we appreciate the candidates you've submitted to us in the past. And we're happy to continue on in that relationship. And that's fine. And I think you need people like that. I think you need the A's, you need the B's. I'm not going to get as close to them. They're not going to retain me. It's okay. Boy, I've got some good people I can place there. The A's, they passed on them, but I can place them to like these 6 or 7 organizations because I'm not burning any bridges. We don't want to work retained. That's okay. We love you anyways. That's okay. Let's keep in touch. And then the C's, those are the people that, well, you couldn't place them anywhere else. And actually, don't even worry about the C's. Just get A's and B's, and that's all you need. And so that's how I would segment that.
And understanding that and wrapping your head around it and just taking different customers for what they are and what the relationship is something that I had to learn over time, because you want them all to be A's, and even the non-A's, you treat them like A's and you have expectations of them like they're A's, right? So you would be like, you're just fighting an uphill battle when it's like, once you realize what the nature of the relationship that they want is, if you try to push it to be something different, you're just gonna work yourself up and waste your own time. And then once you realize
some are A's, some are A's, and some are A-holes. Sorry.
Well, but to your point though, Scott, like I'll still sign from time to time. There's a company I like, I'll still sign a contingency agreement if there's some place that I think that at some point I might have someone to send their way. Because if you think about it, like it's just, you talk about the gambling and you talk about odds. Like I'll send somebody to a potential customer and explain the situation of that candidate. Say, hey, listen, I do have a relationship with this client. I think you might be good for them. I don't have a super tight relationship with them, but I do have an agreement placed with them. Let me see if I can set up a meeting. But if you don't commit a lot of time to that work, and it's not much skin off your back, and there might be a fee there, and that customer might end up being pretty happy, and then maybe it turns into something better. So it's just you got to just understand what they are and just treat them for what they are. Exactly. That's great, Chris. That's great advice, man.
Well, so we're gonna be wrapping up here pretty soon, but I want to ask this before we kind of start wrapping up. And I also want to talk about your book, by the way, but I do want to ask. You talked about A's, B's, and C's. Is it possible to turn a C into a B or an A? And if so, how would you go about doing it?
I would let them tell me what they want. The key is to have a volume of options. Whoever needs it the least always wins. You don't ever want to be a seller. You want to be a buyer. Even if you're selling, you want to structure it so that, and this is something I've even taught people, when you meet with the client and you're selling your services, even if it's the first meeting or the second or the third, you don't say thank you to them, let them thank you. And in your best Chick-fil-A voice, you say, my pleasure. I'm excited about working together. You let them, you put so much value in the relationship. Wow, we're really excited about working with you. Thanks for coming here. My pleasure. I'm excited about working with you too. They need to thank you. When you've got more options, that's why more, better, all. Whoever needs it the least always wins. And you don't want it to be like Barney Fife. I've only got one bullet. Please, please, please hire me. You don't ever want to be in that situation. And I will tell you this, David, also, that when you have a good client like that, that solves all of your recruiting problems. I did a free webinar on that a couple weeks ago. The best way to solve all your problems in recruiting is to have a really good client. And it's one that you can talk about, because that's going to get candidates interested, one that's going to respond. And if you think about all the problems that we have in recruiting, they're all people problems. This business would be easy if we didn't have to deal with candidates and clients. It would be easy. So I think focusing on the client development. How can you build a brand so that, what would it be like if you had inbound inquiries for retained searches? What would it be like if people saw you speak at industry conferences, they called you because you were on the stage? I had one client, she saw me speak at a conference. She ran up to me afterwards, said, everybody drops our name and we don't want them to recruit for us, but we want you to recruit for us. She'd been blowing me off for a year. I said, listen, I'd love to come. She invited me to her party. I said, I'm going to be in New York. I'd love to meet with you and I'd love to recruit for you. You know what she said? Yes, yes, absolutely yes. I don't get that anywhere in my life, right? And so this is so good when you've got good client relationship skills, and it's more than want to buy a chicken. It's more than the NPC. It's establishing yourself as a trusted, credentialed expert within your niche. And it takes time. And most people, I think only 1 out of 100 recruiters are actually going to do that work. I really think only 1 out of 100 are going to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, bottom line, they've got the problem, you've got the solution, right?
Yeah.
And it's a mind frame again, but it's hard to be in. But I get it. It can be hard to be in that mind frame when you're hustling up for business and you're every sales call is a golden opportunity. But you're right. Obviously, having an abundance of choice automatically is going to elevate the relationships with the clients that you do have because you have higher expectations. Like with a child, right? You have high expectations, but boundaries around them, they become a better child, right? But it's the parent that's desperate for their kid's friendship. Right. I'm best friends with my kid. No, you're not. You're a parent. So being best friends with your kid, you're actually messing your kid up. Right. It's the same thing. You got to have boundaries and expectations with your clients, and the good ones are
exactly. I didn't think I was going to get good parenting advice today, David. That's great.
There you go. We do it all here. Well, we're going to be wrapping up here in just a moment, but I do want to make sure that we cover a couple things that again, we mentioned before you're a Renaissance man. You're doing like everything, but a couple things you have an online community called the Placement Club, and also your book called Rainmakers Confidential. And for anybody who's interested in joining Scott Love's online community, it's called the Placement Club, which is a great name, by the way, theplacementclub.com. And Scott, tell me what if they go there, like, what do you have in there? Like, what is that exactly?
Yeah, first I've got some free resources. I do a free webinar about once a month. Then I do a paid webinar once a month. And if you're a member of the Placement Club, you get the paid webinars for free. And then every Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern, I show up and we go deep. I talk about a different topic every week, and it doesn't repeat. Do that for about 15, 20 minutes, and we open it up to the group. Okay, who has a deal that's closest to closing that's in jeopardy? Let's talk about that. And I do this because I like talking about the business, but when you're trying to shorten that learning curve, one of the best ways you can do that is by reading biographies or listening to other people's placement challenges. And so just by observation, you're expanding your domain expertise into the recruiting business by hearing about this scenario, that scenario. Wow, that's a weird scenario. I'm probably going to come across that someday. And now I know how to deal with that. It takes time, but every week I'm there. Once a week, 1 o'clock Eastern, I charge less than the price of a nice dinner, $97 a month. You can cancel month to month. I even tell people, if you join, you show up every week and you cancel, tell me you want your money back and I'll give it to you back. No risk at all. And
excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
I love doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. And one last thing as well before we go, or because we're going to turn out pumpkins here any minute, but I do want to also mention for anybody who's interested in picking up Scott's book, it's called Rainmaker Confidential. You can go to rainmakerconfidential.com and they can order the book from that website, right? Directly from there?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So rainmakerconfidential.com. We'll also make sure, by the way, in the comments here on all of our streams, we'll also put your links in there as well. I highly recommend it. Scott, I've been following you for a long, long time. Love your training. You've got definitely a unique style, which I love. Really unique. I think of all the trainers I've ever known, you're the most storytelling guy, right? You know what I mean? Like you love stories and you connect very well with people, right? And that's what I really love about you. I really appreciate having you on. Really appreciate having you on.
And the credibility, you still do it and you do it with an art. So you're not just talking or pontificating and like so many trainers. Again, I was one too. I got out of the training business and you lose that credibility that you bring. Everything you say has that. Mm-hmm. So great.
Yeah, especially since COVID. But thank you, Neil. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's an honor to be here. It really is.
Pontificate was Neil's word of the day, and he nailed it.
I love it, man.
Good job.
Send it to me in the dictionary.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for watching this. Please do us a favor. If you're watching this live, comment live. Watch replay, comment replay. Like, love, share, and share the show with your friends. If everybody watching the show shared, it would be huge overnight. So it's all up to you guys, you viewers. So thank you so much, everybody. go check out Scott's book. Go check out the Placement Club. Go check out backofficenow.com. And also go check out, of course, me if you want to build your sales and marketing systems for you. All the links are in the comments. With that said, we'll see you next week. Actually, not take it back. See you in 2 weeks. We have a holiday next week. Bye, everybody. Peace out.
See you.